afternoon, everyone. I want to extend a heartily welcome to everyone participating in today's webinar. I am delighted to be hosting this webinar. My name is Heman and I am a research associate at South Asia Research Institute for Minorities, an organization having the vision and mission of defending the rights of minorities in South Asia. We aim to highlight the plight and victimization faced by marginalized minority communities and to break the chain of hatred and violence and intolerance once and forever. Today we will be discussing reassessing the challenges facing the South Asian minorities on International Minorities Day. On December 18, 2022, on International Minority Day, the world shall celebrate at the anniversary of the UN General Embassy Declaration on the Rights of Persons belonging to the national or ethnic, religious or linguistic minorities. This day brings us to a reminder to examine the challenges faced by ethnic, caste, religious minorities of South Asia, to honor the efforts of a right group working in this field and continue to contribute positively in their efforts to bring justice and equality for all the marginalized minority communities of South Asia. SARIM believes that minority rights are an essential part of general human rights framework and must be protected through the national legislation, appropriate government policies, and the support of civil society. The purpose of our webinar is to present a regional overview of contemporary challenges minorities face in South Asia. Moving ahead, we have a fantastic lineup of speakers. Let me give you a quick brief overview of them. Our presenters are Dr. Goldy George from India, Durga Sob from Nepal, and Dr. Sono Khangarani from Pakistan, and Mohammad Asif Khan from India. Our first speaker is Ms. Durga Sob. She's a founder, vice chair, and strategic advisor of an organization called Feminist, Dalit organization, which works for Dalit rights form in Nepal. Ms. Sob, please share your thoughts and experiences with us. Over to you.
Thank you, organizer, for inviting me in these important events. And I'm focusing my presentation intersectionality on gender and caste, which is Dalit women suffer multiple discrimination. And so I would like to focus on that things. Let me introduce the all people should be able to exercise and enjoy their rights. But sadly, this is not always the case. Since Minority Rights Day is observed worldwide, it would in beginning be more regionally and nationally focused. Even when discussing minorities, we frequently overlook the intersectionality that exists within them. Similar to this, caste prejudice and untouchability are still major problem in Nepal. The situation are particularly bad of the the worst of the Dalit community, especially Dalit women. The problem of the minority within the minority is something we can clear. In Nepal, as you know that we have some historical significant achievement which we got after long the struggle. Nepal has promulgated the new constitution in 2015, which has principally abolished all forms of discrimination, ensure the rights of equality in different articles, like for example, right against exploitation has ensured in Article 29 right of against untouchability and caste discrimination. Article 24 rights of women have ensured by Article 38, right of Dalit by Article 40, rights of social justice include in Article 42. This is how the Constitution has ensured the rights of Dalit, marginalized, and and minority rights. Politically, Nepal has transferred from the monarchy to Federal Republic democratic state. However, the condition of Dalit and other minority rights has not been changed as we expected. Dalit community has been left behind from the development processes, and still more than one-third of Dalit is still living the poverty. Historically, Dalit were excluded and discriminated based on the caste. Most importantly, Dalit women have been faced not only caste-based discrimination but also gender-based discrimination. I want to go to the intersection section of gender and caste. Over 130 million Dalit women in globally are placed at absolute bottom of social hierarchy, and they are faced systematic and structural discrimination threefold, caste, gender, and class, especially because they are Dalit, they are women, they are Dalit, so-called untouchable, because of they are poor, of the poorest. The religion in Hindu state mechanism and governing structure. The greater vulnerability to poverty exhibited lower score of throughout women development. Oppressed by the society and experience severe social exclusion, the National Index of Empowerment and Inclusion revealed Dalit women to be the most marginalized and worst often of them the Dalit men. Why we are saying, within the Dalit, what Dalit women facing, Dalit men not facing, what Dalit women facing, other in general women are not facing, due to the caste and gender discrimination, their all socio-political condition is worse compared to the other. So no special provision given to the Dalit women, despite the fact they are in the minority groups. There are some challenges. Also, I already mentioned, still patriarchal and caste-based hierarchy social structure adversely impact the overall development of Dalit women. Religious and patriarchal mindset of the society also, this is the challenge. The Dalit women are still considered much inferior to all. No separate policy, the policy for the women is in general, and then they cannot benefit it, or they are left behind from that policies. That's why we are fighting for the special policy program for the Dalit women. No representation in all formal and informal institution and structure who make decision and allocating resources. We can see some of the representation of the women, but they don't have they are not in that position where they can take decision and allocate the resources. So that's why I'm saying people often fail to sell intersectionality within the minority community. In the context of Nepal, even though there is a law against there is the law against untouchability, many places of Nepal still face the discrimination and untouchability. I think this is the problem of our South Asia. Likewise, according to the recent study which FEDO have done, the number of cases is occur everywhere, every day, but only 80% cases of violence against women of the minority group is reported to the police. This is this year data, this one. Socially and economically marginalized and disempowered, like gender, ethnicity, age, disability, that things. Low skill economic migrant, that one of the migration issue is internal and external migration issue is increasing in our country, the most of from the Dalit community. So this is also one of the challenges with. So what to do? Greater, because we have a similar kinds of problem which we have been facing in South Asia. In South Asia, I know very well that. But in my, the caste discrimination, intersectionality issue is not been the highlighted. It not been the focus in the in South Asia level. That is my biggest concern. Why this is our Asian South Asian issues, but we are not giving the priority to discuss, debate, and highlight this issue. So that's why greater network and collaboration among the civil society, among the in country level and regional level. Advocate for the equitable development and marginalized and discriminated women, because we cannot generalize the women, because we have to focus marginalized, discriminated women. Make work the democratic institution, local government and parliament. In the parliament, I know we have a very less time, because this time we are very much disappointed. Recently, we had election, and there were no representation of the Dalit. Only one Dalit elected in the federal level. So you can see we are also fighting for equal power sharing, no, equal representation at all state mechanism, state institution, but it's not happening. Build the network at regional, global level from the affected community, especially focus on the women. So what can be the recommendation or way forward? Economic empowerment, because everything related and focus on economic things, because poverty is the major issue of the marginalized and Dalit community. So we should have focus on that sector. The leadership development also very equally important. Policy of the government should come, especially rather generalized. As I said, organizational network, mobilization, coordination, collaboration with the like-minded organization and institution. Because I'm so happy because your institution organizing this event, focusing on minority right issue, and we are also talking about the minority within the minority. We are talking about the minority within the minority. So that is also very important. And then Dalit women issue should not be linked with the international, should be linked with the international arena. So the international solidarity should be created, because we need the international solidarity. Also disaggregated quality and quantity data and documentation, because when we do any study and research, we also generalize, so it should be the disaggregated data. That is the biggest debate and biggest suggestion by the everybody. So that is also because from your institution is very important. And another thing is, but we by 2030 we have a leave no one behind. If we go like this way, definitely my minority, marginalized Dalit community would leave behind. So that's why donor agencies should give the priority, and which is behind the achieve the leave no one behind by 2030. State institution, we have so many commission and state institution, but they are not very strong and very equipped and with the mandate. So we also have to strengthen them, because we have a National Dalit Commission, Women Commission, and other committee related commission, also constitutional commission we have. Access to justice and adequate compensation should be ensured in the case of the caste and gender discrimination and violation. And then should have the provision dedicated program of socio-economic empowerment, which I said, and feminist movement, especially regional feminist movement, global feminist movement, and country level feminist movement should recognize and own this as part of the women agenda, because this cannot be the part of the women movement agenda. And another is the issue should take as a priority in the feminist movement and minority rights movement and human rights movement. It should be the as a recognized. So I would like to stop my presentation. If you would like to ask any question, concern, suggestion, I'll be happy to response to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. So. You have given some really good highlights on your presentation. Now, moving to our next speaker, Dr. Goldy George. He is an activist and social scientist in India. Over to you.
So let me once again at the outset thank SARIM and the whole organizing team, and particularly for selecting a very important topic for this webinar, reassessing the challenges that's being faced by the minority communities across Asia, South Asia. As much as I understand, South Asia is it's a vibrant and it's a very pluralistic context that we live, and I can also see Asif also there joining from India. So basically, when we talk about India, I'll speak more about the context in India. When we talk about minorities, we can look at it in different form. Though the constitutional definition may not be the same which I am going to present, perhaps. One is like we have a set of religious minorities. Religious minorities in India are by far like all those ones who are not part of the Hindu society, which consists of Muslims, which consists of Christians, Buddhists, and Parsi, and Jain, and of course Sikhs. So these are the religious minorities. I'll come back to it in a moment when we talk a bit more about it. The second is that we have the caste minorities. As said, my friend from Nepal spoke about the question of Dalits, and I have been for the last 32 years working on caste issues. So I very well understand what she has been narrating in her presentation. And caste, the Dalits basically, they are a minority in many ways, particularly in most of the rural areas of India or even in urban spaces. They are basically limited in numbers. They are lesser in number than the majority community. Therefore, they are definitely a minority community. The third is we in India have ethnic minorities, the Adivasi people, the tribals, the indigenous groups. And fourth, we have what is known as the linguistic minority in India. And there is another set of minorities which is now quite popular among many of the world nations is the sexual minority. But apart from these, now there is a new situation where there is a new context of faith minority. I'm using a specific term, faith minorities, because it is not that all those minorities who fall into the brackets of minority in India, they all are affirmative of their faith. Many of them are considered to be an extension of Hindu religion, both philosophically and theoretically, as well as you could find that it's in practice in the same format. Now, those who are enabled to affirm, whether it's the Muslims, whether it is the Christians, you will find there is a settled and a subtle mechanism that goes on all of them. So, looking at these things, of course, we also have a lot of things that has been happening on human rights questions in India across, uh, particularly in the recently, ended, like UPR cycle. India has been consistently over the past 15 years. If you look at each of the UPR rounds, India has been the complaints against India, though they call it recommendations, the complaints against India has been increasing consistently. So whether it's a question of Dalits, whether it's a question of Adivasis, whether it's a question of minorities, whether it's a question of any other social group, this problem has been consistently on the growth, on increase, not just once, but over the period of time. So you can see there is a settled pattern. So I'm just trying to bring in the whole net the picture that we face in India. Also, we need to. There is no less known fact that India is at the moment being governed by a fascist, political party, and which believes in a very strong, slogan of Hindu nation, Hindu nationalism, which actually means like they call it like one nation, one culture, one religion, that is Hindu, and then they also wants to have a uniform code, a uniform language. India does not have a national language. Many people think like India has a national language called Hindi, but no, India has got only official languages, and as per the Constitution of India, right now India has got 22 official languages. So these are the broader context in which I would like to present a few key mechanisms that has over the period of time, back and forth, you can see it keeps on repeating, and it happens in a very settled pattern. There is a pattern. I'll come to that in a moment. So number one, which I want to mention is like violence is the new normal that India is coming up with. Violence against Dalits, violence against Adivasis, violence against Muslims, violence against Christians, violence against anybody who stands for people's rights and liberties, violence against human rights activists. So you will see, like India has become a republic of violence in that way. Like one of our friends, Anand Tumble, wrote a book a few years ago, which was titled The Republic of Caste. Now it is becoming a republic of violence. So now, what is the pattern? There's a pattern. If you are a Muslim, then you are definitely a terrorist. So you need to be cocked up in some form or other. So you need to be monitored whether you're eating beef or not, whether you are engaging in any form of love jihad or anything like that. So there is a settled pattern. If you are an Adivasi, it is necessarily that you are looked up like a Maoist. So whether the Adivasi stands for his land rights, for his forest rights, his rights on his hills and brook, so that's actually cut down by far without any kind of this democratic space. So whenever there is a tribal movement, there is an Adivasi movement, the indigenous movement is completely met back. It is reverted back in the same way with a very strict form of violence. When the Dalits raise for their voice, they face violence. When the Christians affirm their faith, that's why I was using the term faith minorities. When the Christians affirm their faith, they are met with violence. Their churches are broken. They're in the villages. Their standing crops are burnt. They're not allowed to bury their dead. So you will find there is a systemic mechanism, a very subtle pattern of violence, which is becoming the new normal in India. If a journalist speaks, then he is also attacked. If an activist speaks, he is attacked. If a social scientist, an academician speak, he or she is also attacked. So you'll find that there is a whole set of violence. The second thing is, in all this violence, there is a mechanism of discrimination. It's inbuilt in that. So it's also not just discrimination; it is also stigmatization. Like Musalman to sare jo hai वो आतंकवादी ही होते हैं. All Muslims are just terrorists. All Adivasis are only Maoists. All Dalits are only Naxalites, and all Christians are anti-national. So this is the stigmatization. This is the settled pattern of discrimination that is being inbuilt into this project. The third thing is which I could see Durga spoke at length about Dalit women. I want to also add the Dalit women along with the Adivasi women that we see in a place like where I live in central India, which is a bastion of anti-Maoist operations of the government. And we see here, particularly in this zone, in Chhattisgarh, in Odisha, in Jharkhand, in parts of Maharashtra, and also in other parts like the Northeast and Kashmir, we see rape as a mode, rape as a tool, in fact, rape as a tool being applied in order to spread, fear and terror and violence. So rape is also you can see the case of Hathras, the Dalit girl was raped and killed, and then the whole BJP and RSS politicians began to defend the offender. So you could see a similar pattern. Every single day, a similar case comes of a Dalit woman or an Adivasi woman. Now it is extended to Muslim women and Christian women. So there is a rape, which is a mode of it's a tool to spread violence. And the fourth thing that's happening at the moment in India is the usurpation of natural resources in the name of national development. Whether it's the forest, whether it is the water, whether it is the land, whether it's the minerals, it's being taken away. Remember, there was no pattern, no form. I mean, right from I've been studying the land reforms, the land question, right from the British period, right from the early Indian, government since 1947. There never happened the settlement of land rights of any of these people. Had there been a settlement of land rights, India would not have seen the landless, populace that we see today. So what I'm trying to bring in, there is the whole question of challenges that the minorities face today is connected with the broader idea of justice and how justice is translated into reality, how justice is completely at the altar. It's actually like being sacrificed at the altar day in and day out. What kind of justice are we talking about? It is number one is social justice. There is a complete subtle problem of social justice. Number two is economic justice. Number three is political justice. Number four is cultural justice. India and the South Asian countries, which includes India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, these all countries have been living a statehood of cultural imperialism. So we live a very, 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 very strong, that we live a life which is basically based on a settled pattern. As I said in the beginning, everything has to be based on Hindu. Caste has to be based, even the purity of blood. Caste, the idea of caste comes from the theory of purity of blood. The purity of blood is also decided by this cultural imperialistic pattern that has overdriven the country right now. So there is a lot to do, but there is a lot to do. There is a need to organize the people. There is a combined effort to organize all the affected people that is required. There's a inter-country, solidarity and cooperation that's required, inter-regional solidarity and cooperation that's required. And I thank SARIM for taking up this opportunity to bring the inter-country regional solidarity expression through this forum. And there is a high requirement of international solidarity and cooperation in this context. So we lack all these things. We don't have any of these things in India. Any effort to organize is being met with a lot of violence. As I said, violence is a new normal. I'm sure, if you do a serious study about India, how violence have become the new normal, you will find it has this whole hangover of the erstwhile Brahminical system that domains this country. What needs to be done? There are three things which I would propose, and I'll end my words. Number one, there is a real requirement to revisit secularism and the process of secularization. There is a real need in India to revisit the whole notion of secularism and the process of secularization. So I would, I'll just make this bullet point, and in case if there is any questions, then I'll be really happy to respond back. Number two is there is a real need to revisit the premises and perimeters of democracy. I remember what Dr. Ambedkar, while presenting the constitution in the Indian Parliament, said: "We are entering into a new phase of democracy. We are entering into a new phase of democracy, to political democracy. But this political democracy will become a reality only when we have social democracy." So I quote Dr. Ambedkar: "This social reality, or this social democracy, this cultural democracy, this economic democracy has not materialized in India. There is a need where we revisit the whole notion of democracy." And number three, a pro-people, realistic, secular, and revisited democratic program and approach is needed for this country. And I think this is very much needed for Pakistan, for Nepal, for Bangladesh, for Sri Lanka, and for all the nations in the South Asian region. So I'll just stop here. I think this is a very essential thing, that minorities will not survive unless there is a cooperation from the majorities, unless there is a requirement from the majorities. Minorities cannot survive in the air with as minorities, but minorities can survive when there is cooperation from the majorities, and minorities will survive when the minorities learn to organize, agitate, educate, agitate, and organize, as Baba Sahib Ambedkar said. I thank you very much for this opportunity, and I extend all my wonderful regards to all of you, and particularly to the organizing team in SARIM. Thank you, Heman. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you, Dr. Goldie. It was really comprehensive, and was pleasure to hear you. Now I would like to cordially ask Dr. Sonu Khangarani, CEO of Thardeep Microfinance Foundation from Pakistan, to share his thoughts about this minorities in South Asia. Over to you, Dr. Sonu.
Thank you, Heman, and congratulations to whole team of this research institute organizing this. I'm abroad this time and in very cold weather, and my voice may be a little heavy, so I don't know whether it is audible and understandable to all of the audience. I hope it is. Let me be saying it in the beginning and outset that I'm very proud Pakistani Dalit from the minority group of population. And, and I'm very proud that Jogendranath Mandal was the first law minister of new created state, Pakistan. So, that is the kind of an historical context that why we are here in Pakistan as a minority group. But let me also say some of the historical perspectives. Our Qaid Muhammad Ali Jinnah mentioned somewhere that a minority does not, have space if they are not having independence. And that is one of the reasons why we were independent and we prosper as a Pakistani population, as a Muslim and an Islamic state. But let me also say that some of the very positive and affirmative actions that Pakistan has taken since it came into being. But there are certain concerns which I will mention later. Religious minority in Pakistan enjoy freedom of expression and association as per the constitution, which is very much there. We don't have any restriction on that. Legally, the religious minorities in Pakistan are protected, which is by law. However, there are certain cases which which are being reported, at the time they happen. Recently, changes to the family law, which is very good, and the family law has been promulgated by the assemblies, which prohibit underage marriage within minorities, which means there is a limited chance of forced marriages and forced conversion, which is also a very affirmative action. And thanks to the government of Pakistan, minority here enjoys the reserved seats quota in services, 5% reserved seat quota in all the institutional employment. This is crucial in ensuring that the minorities have access to quality educational jobs. Several opportunities in key government services without discrimination, such as armed forces, judiciary, civil services, are a very incredible actions that we must mention here. There are also reserved seats in the legislative assemblies for minorities, which I will talk later. They have also challenges and proportionately what they belong to. There is also a possibility of formation of minority commission in Pakistan, and there are minority affair division and departments at the provincial levels and the federal level, with a substantial budget allocation for protection and welfare of minority communities. Though there are some challenges which we need to focus on. There's also consideration in census, which minority, now being counted as a minority in Pakistan. And of course, they hopefully will be having more share of Dalit communities into that once they are counted fairly. Finally, there's a legal protection for the places of worship of all the faiths. I think this has become one of the kind of a secure, gives the security to the minority communities in Pakistan. However, having said that, there are some challenges, and the challenges are not different than what my other two speakers colleagues mentioned. Officially, there are 4% of Pakistani population comes from religious minorities. Of these 4%, approximately 80% are Dalit. However, unofficial sources suggest a number higher than that. Therefore, establishing an accurate number of minorities and minorities within the minorities is a significant challenge for all of us, and the government institution have a major challenge. While minorities everywhere receive some form of protection legally, the reality is often different in some cases and in some times, which we have to check in. In Pakistan, there are very, very big distinction. There are two types of minorities. I'm not, distinguishing them within the caste, but I'm saying it's an elite minority which is part of the mainstream in all spheres, and then is a deprived and poverty-stricken poverty, which is often oppressed because of the caste system. I think everybody spoke about the caste system here. So casteism is another issue of challenge, which can have a major challenge. The rights are being ignored because there's a little representation at the legislative assemblies of the deprived or lower caste minorities in Pakistan. That is one of the major challenges. Religious minorities in legislature are usually represented by elite within minorities. I think that doesn't speak of the oppressed classes, Dalit classes, or poor classes in Pakistan. So this ends up in elite capitalism in all the resources that are dedicated to the minorities in Pakistan, and elite oppression within the minorities, therefore, is the biggest challenge. There's a huge gender disparity in terms of quality of life, well-being, education, and health, as the other fellow speakers also spoke about. Coming to the South Asia region, quite honestly, I'm not talking about the Bangladesh and Nepal. The Nepal friend has already spoke about this, but India is on a different trajectory, as we heard of it. And let me also say that despite the rise of Hindutva ideology in India, which is very, very potential threat to the minority, the BJP see to quote Dalits for their votes. Hence, their narrative has slightly shifted and involves appropriating Dalit tradition, for example. I think that is very dangerous. In Hindutva ideology paradigm, the state in which Ram exists then is referred to a Rama Raja, or an imagined Hindu utopia in which upper and lower caste exists together in the unity. It is easy to see the appeal this might have to lower caste groups. I think that is a major conversion going on within in the Hindustan. Uh, that is also one of the major challenges. And Hinduta forces have depicted Lord Ram as he's portrayed in the Ramayana as a symbol of unity through his use of helpers that are depicted as Dalits. This narrative is disseminated through various means, but is particularly focused on Dalit communities that are engaged in process of ethnicization. The key Muslim-Hindu dichotomy created by Hindu nationalism, where to be Muslim is to be on one side of the conflict, and to be Hindu is to be on the other, without any room of reconciliation, which is a very major challenge in the coming days, even today. This dichotomous designation also goes hand in hand with the Hindutva appropriation of Indian space. As we can see with the cult of Bharat Mata, which is again a very motivational issue for the rest of the as an Indian national narrative. The effect of othering Muslims over low caste Hindus seems to have brought many Dalit voters into the Hindutva fold. And that is where they are beginning to discriminate the other. Perhaps through the linking of anti-Muslim sentiment with the high caste values, creating a secularization complex surrounding the othering of group that is not Dalits. So I think they have distinguished how to. They have also made an agenda how to bring Dalit into the fold and separating and thinning out the other minority people in the region so that they can then crush them. In my view, the minorities in India are second-grade citizens, particularly in the case of Christians. In case of Christians and Muslims, because they now face major atrocities, and the number of atrocities against Dalits. Of course, many Christians are Dalits also. Are on the high rate. Even the court judgment, I have heard this, I don't know, I have to confirm it. The court judgment categorically quote references from Hindu faith books to really give a message that this is the nation, impacting the freedom of choice and expression. And, that's how it works. The atrocities and violence to non-Hindu Dalits and Muslims are rampant, and are counted over 50,000 cases of violence, brutality, and abuses in a year. I think that any country or a democratic claim cannot afford to have those numbers of violences, brutality, abuses, and sexual violence, including the rape. There is also a shrinking spaces for minorities in South Asia context in all spheres of life. That is a very dangerous thing. I end up saying that the minorities in Pakistan would have been more deprived and less gainful if they had decided to migrate to neighboring state. Keeping in mind the situation of Dalits and scheduled caste, Adivasis, tribal societies, STCs, all those. If they are not Hindus, if they don't claim to be Hindus, if they don't, go with the majority notion, they are being deprived and they are considered to be a bad minority. So I think we have to come together. We have to fight for this. We have to ask our democracies where we can bring. And in last, I have three things that I think shall go as a recommendation from this forum. Is the is the restoration of 6% quota, which was there since 1956 for the scheduled caste in Pakistan. I think that is one thing which we can think about it. Land rights, so of course, because many of our poor and Dalit communities in Pakistan, which belong to a minority, they are landless. So they keep on moving from one place to another place. So their identity is an issue. We have to look into this as well. We have to have a legislation where we should have a double vote, so that we, as minority and as a Dalit, we can elect our own representatives, though they should be nominated or given ticket by the political party, rather than they are just nominated on their whims and wishes, the political parties' wishes and whims. I think they should have an equity in the social safety nets which are offered by the government. Then we have to, quite honestly, we have to review the Qaed's vision, which he promised 75 years ago, and see what he said and how we can implement in true spirit to make more prosperous minorities in Pakistan. I thank you very much, and if there's any question, I will be happy to.
I totally agree with you, Dr. Khangarani. Thank you very much for sharing your valuable thoughts and views. Now, I would like to welcome our last speaker, Mohammad Asif Khan. He's an Indian Muslim activist, document cases of hate crime against minorities in India. Over to you, Mr. Khan.
Yeah, thank you very much, SARIM and organizer, for inviting me here on this webinar. So the topic is related to the minority rights in South Asia. Well, I will start from of course, the Indian minority, Indian Muslim and the Christians and their rights and what's going on in India right now. So, see, as far as discrimination against minorities is concerned, it exists everywhere, not only in India, not only in South Asia, but even in the first world country. You can see such there are some kind of discrimination against the minorities or the oppressed section of the society, and there are kind of prejudices exist against minority. I mean, see, even in the Western world, there are people who are immigration, the people of the color, and there are discrimination and prejudices exist against them. But it happens on individual level. Like it happens in society level. That society, some individual in the society, there are some bad apples in the society, and they are oppressing people or attacking them based on their identity, whatever it can be a religious identity or the racial identity or any kind of ethnic identity, whatever. But in those countries there is a system which can protect their right. If something happened to them, there is media, there is legislation, code, judiciary. They would support their right, their human right, their democratic right. They can approach them. Even a major chunk of the society would support the victim in those countries. Unfortunately, that is not the case, at least here in India. That is not the case, at least here in India. Being an Indian Muslim, I'm saying, what would you do when the whole system is against you? It is not the individual, it is not your neighbor, it is not your officer or your boss in the office, it is not your teacher in the school. It is the whole society plus whole system which is against you. That's what happening with the Indian Muslim, Indian Christian, and other minorities right now. Because whatever we are seeing, we are seeing right now in India, what is the development going on. It is not the case of discrimination. It is a case of state back persecution where violence is being unleashed against Muslim and the Christian every day. Every damn day we have to face. There are so many cases going on where you have to see the violence. People are getting lynched. People are getting beaten up on mere accusation of um, consuming beef or having some kind of legal illegal affair with the Hindu girls, or the Christians are getting attacked, their churches are getting attacked on the accusation of forceful conversion of the Hindus into the Christianity. So these are the things going on, and unfortunately, the system is not merely acting as a mute spectator, but system is directly or indirectly supporting those people who are perpetrator in this kind of crimes. Recently, I think it was 27th of November, in Frisco, Texas, America, there is a organization called Global Hindu Heritage Foundation. That organization set up a fundraising event in the America, and it was clearly mentioned in their agenda that we are collecting fund to destroy, to demolish the churches in Tirupati, South India. This was clearly mentioned in their agenda. Can you imagine how powerful they are, that they are sitting in the first world country like America and openly organizing a fund, collecting the money and saying that we are collecting money for some agenda. Our agenda is to demolish churches in India and for against the for the Garwapsi. What is Garwapsi? Garwapsi is a campaign or the agenda of Hindutva ideology, where they claim that there are so many Hindus, they were converted to Islam or into Christianity, on by force or by luring them, offering them some money. So now it is our duty convert them back into Hinduism. So when they convert back Muslim or Christian into Hinduism, or they convert any Muslim or a Christian with, they can offer money or whatever. They call it Ghar Wapsi. They don't call it simply a conversion into Hinduism. They call it Ghar Wapsi, homecoming. And they have been, collecting money in the US for that purpose. So what we are facing right now is not something like that you can fight by, like some kind of presenting memorandum to some judges or magistrates saying that such this is going on, or you can organize a press conference, you just issue a statement and problem will be solved. No, it won't happen. It didn't happen in Myanmar. We have seen what happened in the Myanmar. Ultimately, approximate 1 million Rohingyas were forced to leave their own country, and many people were killed, raped. How did it happen? It was not a mere discrimination, some kind of discrimination. It was a state-sponsored violence. So the same kind of things is going on in India right now, and these are not my words. The Genocide Watch is a very reputable organization in the West. The director of genocide was said that actually he was the one who predicted Rwanda genocide in the 1990s. He predicted same thing for the India few months back. He had said whatever is happening in India right now, there are symptoms of the future genocide. That India is on the path of the genocide. So I'm not comparing the oppression of the different kind of minority, like minority are getting oppressed in every country, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, but at least in those countries like Pakistan or Bangladesh, I would say that the violence is not supported by the court, not supported by the system, not supported by the ruling party, not supported by any kind of fascist organization. This few months back, a Sri Lankan national was visiting Pakistan on the accusation of blasphemy or insulting the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Pakistan government took action against those people who were responsible for the murder, and they had given the compensation to the victim's family, and all that things happened. In India, in last 8 years, hundreds of people have become the victim of such kind of mob violence, and not in one single case the victim or victim's family got justice. There is not even a single case where victim's family got justice. The people who were responsible for this kind of heinous murder and crime, they were they were granted bail by the court. They are roaming free, and not only that, The minister who are sitting in the power, they were fighting their case, providing them legal assistance, and garlanding them when they came out of the jail on the bail or remission. They were being welcomed by the minister themselves. So to fight such kind of strong opposition, which is using manpower, monetary power, state machinery against you, I think we need international solidarity. Not only solidarity, but the the international community need to speak up. Those people who are in the position, who have privilege, have some kind of power in whatever capacity, they need to speak up, because India has become now like an echo chamber. Like, the North Korea is there. Whatever happens in North Korea, you never come to know outside North Korea, because there is a restriction on the media, press. There is no press freedom. If people write on social media, they don't have that kind of freedom. That kind of things happening in India as well right now. So people outside India, they were restricted to get the information, the real information, and unfortunately, the Indian media is totally against showing the truth. They are not doing justice with their profession. So the responsibility is on the civilians who are who have the kind of freedom or some kind of I would say power to speak. They can come forward to stand with the Indian Muslim, Christian, or Dalit and Sikh and many other minorities who are getting oppressed in India. Solution is like other previous speakers said that, for example, Dr. Sonu was saying that some kind of reservation need to be done, or some kind of things for the scheduled caste or scheduled tribe need to be done in Pakistan. At least he can say that, because maybe Pakistan system or government is not opposing it directly. In India, the Indian Parliament and the people who are sitting in the Parliament, they are making the law which are directly goes against Indian minority. I mean, how can you expect from such people that they would make a law in our favor to protect our right? That is not the case. When they are clearly making the law, what happened in the Germany, like they created Nuremberg law. That's what happening right now, when they are creating laws which will more and more oppress and persecute the minorities. So in that case, I don't see the hope from the system, but I believe that international community, whether they are in Asia, or whether in Europe, or whether they are sitting in North America, they need to come forward. The diaspora, the onus is on the shoulder of the Indian or Pakistani diaspora as well. They are living there. They need to speak up, because they are part of the community as well, and they are more privileged than those people who are living in India. So use your privilege, use your knowledge, use your, if you have money, use them to for the benefit of the society. And as far as the things in India, right, the political situation is concerned, it is very much responsible for whatever is happening. And I believe that the situation will get worse in the future. I don't see any hope right now. But those people who are the majority, good people from the majority community, it is their responsibility to support their minority brothers. I mean, unfortunately, there are people, maybe they are good people, but they are mute spectators. They remain silent. Whatever is happening, they close their eyes, they close their ears, they don't speak at all. So it is their own onus on their shoulder to come forward, to speak up, to go on the ground and protect to the people, and to show that you are not endorsing that violence, you are not endorsing that kind of persecution which is inflicted upon Indian Muslim, Christian, and other minority. So I think it will take time as far as India is concerned. It won't happen overnight, and we are in really problematic and deep situation right now. But uh, the people who are even in India, those people who are Hindu and who think that whatever is happening in the name of Hindutva or Hinduism, which is against the principle of their religion and they are defaming their religion, they need to come forward for the sake of the humanity, for the sake of the democratic right of people. And okay, there is a question: what steps can we take so that the plight of minorities and then it discuss the get? So, well, the situation would be different. See, because every country is a different situation. India's situation is different. So in India, in India, first of all, you need any community. If you want to protect your rights, you need some kind of political power. If you will not be active in the system, you are not part of the system, someone else not gonna protect your right. Nobody will protect your right. You will have to protect your own right. For that, you need to fight for your right. You need to be part of the system. If your representative are not sitting in the parliament, they will not make a law which will protect your democratic right. They will make such kind of legislation which will go against you. If you are not in the police department, you are not in the bureaucracy, how would you protect yourself? So the fight is long, and each and every community have to have to fight for their political right. I think I have spoken enough. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Khan. You have really given us the bigger picture of minorities, not in just India, but overall the South Asia. I think we have a question from Purkho. Dr. Sonu, would you like to answer this question?
I think Prokho's question is raised and very pertinent. He says that what are the steps that we take so that the plight of the minorities. The one thing, they have to be very honest and nationalist in their own context, of course. And they have to organize themselves. Without organizing and educating, contributing to the nation's nationality and nation, it won't help. The nation may not be coming forward and help. The state may not be coming forward and help. Number one. Number two, I think we have to come together as a group. There we have to have our own fight within minority. Quite honestly, in Pakistan, if that is not an there's always a German saying that we are all equal, but somebody is more equal. I think we have to come out of the more equal. We have to be equal, and that is the message we all have to adopt. Otherwise, we will be considered a lower caste. We will be considered this. So steps is to really organize, come together, get an dignity, get an identity, one identity, which may be anything, scheduled caste or whatever tribes. Until unless we do not, the lower castes or the majority within the minority does not come together and fight for their own, equality within the minority, it won't help a lot.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sonu. You have really briefly explained the questions very well. Now I would like to welcome Sumbul Yousuf, the project director at SARIM, to summarize our online discussion. Over to you, Ms. Sumbul.
So I'm extremely grateful to all the honorable speakers that spared their time for this event. And this was especially important for us because we are approaching, actually this is the event of International Minority Rights Day and commemoration of the 30th anniversary of that declaration. However, unfortunately, as our speakers shone light on the situation of minorities and lower caste in South Asia, we see that situation is not as we would like it to be, as we expect it to be. Durga Sob rightfully mentioned the intersectionality of marginalization of Dalits and women at the same time as they face double-faced discrimination. And she focused rightfully on economic empowerment and political participation, which is very important. Without proper participation in the political process and economic empowerment, no minority community, and especially females who are from the minority community cannot be emancipated. Dr. Goldie George was very elaborate in describing the grim situation in India regarding the faith minorities and the caste minorities, as well as Adivasis, as he mentioned, the plight that they are facing. And as he mentioned, unfortunately, that violence is the new normal, where all minorities, those who dare to speak against the violence, activists, journalists, academicians, are targeted with various forms of violence. And what he sought for is justice, which includes social justice, economic, political, and cultural justice. And he rightfully said that South Asia as a whole is facing a cultural imperialism, and we need to address that. What was highlighted by Dr. Sono was that even though in Pakistan we have a very inclusive situation where legally minorities are protected, there are challenges where we face some sort of discrimination. And as he mentioned, that Dalits make up 80% of the minority population. However, their counting is not equivalent to the official figure, and that creates challenges to provide legal permission to those affected minority, that is lower caste minority especially. And he mentioned that there was a 6% quota for the SCs in Pakistan that should be revived so that the Dalit community can be emancipated in Pakistan. And he reminded us of the vision Quaid-e-Azam gave for Pakistan, and we all need to revisit it, review it, and try to make it a reality. He also shone light on how Hindu extremism in India is not only othering faith minorities, but also appropriating the Dalit emancipation cause by the use of propaganda. Mr. Muhammad Asif has been very helpful in letting us know what Indian Muslims are facing. And he highlighted that although discrimination is faced by minorities elsewhere too, but the state is not the sponsor of that discrimination and violence, which is the case in India, which makes the Indian Muslims feel extremely helpless because every single state institution is there not to help Muslims. And I think what we can take from this very useful and resourceful discussion from here is that we need to join hands regionally and through different means. We need to make a strong civil voice that could reach out to the world for the purpose of minority emancipation, for the purpose of lower caste groups emancipation, and the Dalit women who are facing double discrimination, and especially the Christians and Muslims from India who told us right now in this forum that how helpless they feel because of their voices are not being heard outside the country, and it's as if outside that nothing has happened in there. So we need to mobilize an international support for the cause of human rights and minority rights in South Asia. I hope this would be a major step for this effort to join hands and to move forward our struggle for the emancipation of minority rights. I'm very, very grateful to all our panelists. Thank you for participating, and thank you for making this International Day as resourceful as this.
Finally, thank you so much, Ms. Sumbul, and to all other speakers. I think we have gathered a lot from this webinar. We appreciate your time being here. I hope to see you all super soon. Stay safe and healthy, and bye.
Thank you. Thank you.